What is up, everybody? Happy Tuesday to you. It's cold as hell out here in Michigan. I mean, it is just cold, ridiculous. The kids are not going to be going to school tomorrow. It's a snow day, even though the snow is not the problem. It's the temperatures. We are having sub-zero temperatures out here, which is not very comfortable. So I got my little long snuggy robe on. I love these things. I have several of them because I just like feeling cozy. But anyways, off of that, what's on my radar? So in my last video, I talked about how Africans and Blacks in America are not the same. We are culturally not the same. And I made a point in that video about how it's very rare that you're going to find Black Americans who just uproot themselves and go to some African land and live there. Well, recently I caught a couple of videos of African American or Black Americans who went to Africa to exist among what they believed were their people. And what they found was the harsh reality that these people in the African nations really didn't think of them as their people. And one of the young ladies talked about how it was very difficult for her to even immerse in the African culture because of the language. She was in Tanzania, and obviously the language barriers made it very difficult for her to have a real cultural immersion. Well, outside of that, she and another young lady made a point of talking about how they had issues with the immigration and they might have even gotten scammed, you know, in their journey to Tanzania. And the one girl, she said that she was going back and forth with the immigration office. I think she was waiting for about 5 hours, she mentioned, only for them to tell her that she had a 2 week extension and then she had to leave. And she said that she did not feel welcomed in that country, right? She didn't feel welcome. And that is to say that Africans, they are tribal people, right? They've always been tribal people. And Black Americans, we don't fit in those tribes. And as I said in my last video, we are culturally removed from African culture. Our culture is very westernized, right? And even when you think about the few slaves that came to America and then the broad numbers of slaves that were sent to Spanish countries and Brazil, right? Those individuals consider themselves Spanish or Brazilian. They don't consider themselves African Brazilian or African Spanish, right? It's only in America that you're going to have that category of Black because that is how African descendants of slaves were categorized in this nation. I mean, first we were Negroes and the other word too, and colored folks, and all these labels to define these melanated people that were pretty much removed from our culture. So that is just to say that it's unfortunate that those young ladies had that experience, but it's also very eye-opening, right? And it validates the point that, Black Americans, we are our own culture. We are not Africans. And there are some Black people who want to hold on to, their African ancestry. And it's like, I mean, yeah, you can definitely be in tune with your ancestry, but your nationality is American, okay? You are American. You are Black American. And Black American, whether you like the culture or not of Black Americans, we come with our own mindset, our own practices, our own struggles that are rooted and woven in America. We are not the same as these African people. And, and there are some Black Americans who try to be like them, right? But even then, they see or feel the rejection sometimes. There are some Africans who are like, yes, we want Black people, Black Americans to come home and embrace their culture. There are some Africans that are just way down with that, right? But many of them are not, because they recognize the cultural differences between us, Black women in America and Black women in these African nations. We're not the same. Same thing with the men. So I'm glad I saw that video, and check out O'Shea Duke Jackson, because I think he's also gonna be. I think he did a video on it as well. I didn't get a chance to see it, but I caught it in my feeds. But I mean, it just validates the point that I made before. Black Americans have an identity crisis. Some of us, many of us, right? Many of us have an identity crisis. And I think a lot of it is because I think culturally, some of us feel homeless in this nation because we really don't want to embrace what has become the modern day Black American culture. And a lot of it is riddled with violence, hypersexualization, disrespect. I mean, even when you look at the Blacks in politics, these people aren't even, you don't see them sort of, elevated or propped as this is Black culture. You see hip hop. You see all kinds of other projections of Black people that are more on the negative side. And that's what they want to force feed as our culture. Hip hop is not our culture. Hip hop is a part of that culture, but it's not the culture. And they're constantly trying to make hip hop the Black American culture. And I think that's where a lot of people have the disconnect. A lot of Black people who are removed from that culture because hip hop is rooted in poverty line behaviors and mindsets. And most Black people are attempting to elevate themselves from those things. So it doesn't really work to be the Black culture. Otherwise, you will have people like me who will be culturally homeless, and all I have is my American existence, just my universal American existence. But anyways, I wanted to just call that point to you guys' attention, just because it just fits so well with my last video. What else is on the radar? The World Economic Forum, they're meeting this week to see how they can destroy our lives and wreck global economies. It's crazy. And I mostly follow that on Twitter. But let me tell you, I just started using Twitter Spaces, and I jumped into a couple of spaces, and I love Twitter Spaces. I absolutely love Twitter Spaces. I like the dialogue that you can have about, a variety of different topics that impact people. I got into a Twitter space today talking about is the Republican Party races. And it was obviously hosted by a number of Democrat individuals, but there was a mixture of social and political viewpoints in the space, which I loved. Now, one thing I noticed, that the Democrats, when they debate, when they argue, they curse, they're emotional, they don't listen, they're very contradictory and condescending, right? Whereas individuals that were on the more Republican side of the argument, they had more grace in their argument. And that's not to say that Republicans are more graceful than Democrats, but in some things, they are more graceful in terms of dialogue and debate. I think your modern Republicans are trying to take pointers from the Democrats in terms of their behaviors and the way that they kind of go back and forth in the public space, because it's more entertaining to see these political puppets go back and forth with each other, even though we all know that they're not really making decisions, no matter if they're even an elected president of the United States. Because we're a globalist world. And I think that people don't realize how global order this world really is. We're not really picking these politicians. They're giving us the illusion that we are, but we're really not. They've already been selected. We just find out on election day when everything is called, right? But yeah, I don't have any trust in our election process at all. Nope, I don't. I really, really don't. But anyways, people are making a big deal about the election season, Donald Trump, Nikki Haley, Joe Biden. Who else do the Democrats have besides Biden? I mean, and this is just like the crazy thing to me. It's like, how do we end up down to the same people every time, the usual suspect? There's never anybody else. And I know why, right? It's annoying, but it's, like I said, these people are selected, right? But it's just crazy that there's no creativity in the selection process at all. And they just got all these goofy people. And it's like, okay, America, choose between the best or the worst. Choose between the best and the worst. But anyways, I didn't want this to be a long one, but I did want to make that point because I just feel like I am so tired of these race-related conversations, okay? For decades in this nation, race has been like the number one go-to of division. And I'm glad that there's so many, blacks and whites that are waking up and seeing that this stuff is just recycled and leveraged. And they're trying to get down to the real root cause of this problem. And a lot of it is race is a mask for the economic damage that a lot of these people are doing to this nation. And when you look at the economic damage, that economic damage is not racist. It's hitting every single person in this nation indiscriminately, whether you're black, white, Puerto Rican, or Haitian. And that's just to say that, people need to break up from this divide and conquer strategy and really open their eyes to what's really going on. I mean, from the monopolies in this country to the policies in this country, things are not being decided, for the best interest of the people. If anything, it's disenfranchising people more and more. So divorce the racism stuff, right? Racism is what they like to project, during these political cycles. They need people divided. And, I have my opinions too, when I look at, people like Joy Reid, right? Talking about white Christians and blah, blah, blah. It's like, who's paying? Like, first of all, these executives at these media groups, they are white looking people. And I say white looking people because even within that window, that construct of white, you have several different types of groups. You have the Jewish whites who claim they're not whites, but they're Europeans. Most Western Jews are Europeans. So they're white, right? And then you have your Christian whites. And I believe that, when you talk about white supremacy in this nation, it's really them. They're the ones who are going back and forth, with the supremacy stuff. And we're all just, anybody who's not them are literally we're pawns in that game. And I truly believe that. And that's not to attack Jews. I think that there's some good Jews and it's not all Jews. But let's just be real. This is the Jewish whites and the Christian whites. And even their Muslim counterpart brother whites. Because sometimes they will even lump Muslims up as white. This is their supremacy wars. Everybody else, we're just pawns to their game. So that's all I got for you guys on this Tuesday. I hope you guys stay safe, try to stay afloat, and do what you can to keep yourself protected in this climate. I think 2024 is going to be a very interesting year, and we shall see. We shall see. I mean, I'm expecting either a sensationalized lynching, police lynching, white cops, black guy, that being sensationalized in the media, or Disease X. Alex Jones is talking about Disease X, so who knows? Maybe they'll pop another pandemic. Isn't it crazy how these viruses seem to be so timed during political cycles, right? Or they'll have some like Asian threat or hate, or maybe they'll just even pop a domestic terrorist event on us this year. I'm kind of betting on the domestic terrorist thing. It's like we got too many immigrants coming into the country. It's a perfect storm, right? It's a perfect setup to a storm. I can believe the domestic terrorism thing. I think, popping the police lynching in this cycle, because the Democrats, they are desperate. They're losing Hispanic voters. Black men are jumping ship. Even black women are looking at them like they're crazy because of this immigration thing. So, and be careful. Watch your state. Get involved with your local and state politics, because I know in Michigan, they had petitioners out trying to get illegals IDs. And you need an ID to vote. So these people are out here in these streets trying to get these illegal immigrants IDs so that they can work and possibly, participate in our political process. Who knows? Who knows? But that is just to say that it's going to be an interesting year. It's going to be interesting, too, because you notice how that Epstein thing, it's the 16th of January. They promised the information on the 1st. They dropped some court documents that, with information that the public pretty much knew. A lot of that stuff from those Epstein revelation thing, public already knew it. And it didn't really do anything to anybody, because when you're dropping politicians and celebrities, it's like, on a good day, nobody really cares about them. You know why? Because there's bigger fish on that list that are being protected. But like I said, they're not going to release that Epstein list because there are way too many industries that could be affected. Just the markets would not respond well to the real Epstein list coming out, because there's too many major corporations with sexually perverse CEOs, and it would just be too damaging to the reputations of those companies. So I think that they are hiding the Epstein list to protect those pedophiles and those lawyers and judges too, because Epstein just got off way too much for them not to even be involved with that craziness, disgusting, satanic stuff. But I think that they're also protecting the markets. They're protecting investors, in my opinion, just because it would just send the market. The market's already going to be volatile, I believe, this year, just because we're in a political cycle. You got these conversations about wars. You got things happening abroad that we're involving ourselves in. So you're already going to have that instability. But then to add like that Jeffrey Epstein stuff and the real revelations, it wouldn't even be able to take it. So I don't think we're going to get what we want out of that Jeffrey Epstein thing at all. And I think that it's best for us to just move on from this distraction, because that's all the Epstein revelations really were. Or they're just distracting us from what they're really trying to do to us. Like World Economic Forum is happening this week. Jeffrey Epstein has faded off the radar, and it's just a total blackout. It's like a total blackout. So they're planning something. It's 2024. That means we have 6 years until 2030. 6 years into 2030. And really, a lot of their agendas have a timeline of being executed or execution by 2030. So it's going to be some interesting times. And, hopefully we, the people, wake up and understand things very broadly. Just because it's just a lot of evil people in this nation, around the world. And they are trying. I feel like they're gunning for ultimate control, and the best way to control people is to get into their emotions, control their emotions, be able to distract their emotions from something. So prepare to be prepared, and just do everything you can to protect yourself. Bye.